イタリウイスキーあ、イタリビールクでネバララキバシキレテおーノーそれにあのレビーLet's begin. Indeed.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. This is the Fireside Chat. My name is Brian Martinez. I am the host. And on the Fireside Chat, we typically speak with interesting people that, we either like the work they're doing or we want to learn more about it. And on this week, I'm speaking with, well, I guess I'm just going to call it Vault of Truth, right? That's like your YouTube channel.
Yes.
It also seems to be your sort of online persona in general. So welcome to the show, Vault of Truth.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And look, if you want to call me Stevie J, that's fine.
Okay.
Or Stevie, that's fine. I also have that name, so that's cool. A bit easier than Vault of Truth or Vault or something.
Yeah, I'll just call you Stevie. But you do run a YouTube channel called Vault of Truth. What is Vault of Truth? What is that you do there?
Okay, well, there's a little bit of a background story to that because Vault of Truth as a channel is fairly new. And before that, I had a channel called Stevie J Raw. And that was my main channel where I was covering, the Johnny Depp case with Amber Heard and, just generally advocating for male victims, to be honest, of domestic violence. And not too long ago, probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, YouTube decided to demonetize the platform over there. And it was due to Amber Heard fans false flagging the channel for reused content. So that channel basically became dead in the water, essentially. So I started Vault of Truth to continue getting videos out there and, as per the name, get the truth out there. So Vault of Truth is relatively new, but I've been, doing YouTube for a few years now.
Yeah, so I did notice that when I went there, but I also knew there was a bit of a backstory. So you said false flagged, or essentially there were people who supported Amber Heard in this whole case, and they were trying to harm you or limit your ability to reach people, and they were using the YouTube guidelines to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much what happened. So Christopher Boozy, who is on Twitter, he runs a company called Bot Sentinel. And that company is one that Amber Heard used in the UK trial to basically try and discredit Johnny and support her claim that Johnny created an online campaign against her by creating fake Twitter accounts. So this company, Bot Sentinel, run by Christopher Boozy, even posted an admission on Twitter about my demonetization, saying, yeah, we got another one. And so they've tried to take down lots of channels, much like mine. SEC is another one, Incredibly Average, that Umbrella guy. Many, many, many channels have been targeted.
Oh yeah, and I know that she's actually name dropped a couple in in court, right? So, yes. When that happened to you, when you found that you were being like, I guess hounded in this way, did that surprise you? Did you think that this was just like kind of wild?
Well, sort of. I mean, in a sense, it doesn't feel good, of course. It doesn't feel good to be targeted like that. But it also wasn't a surprise because, if anyone's watched the trial or looked into any of the evidence around the case with Johnny and Amber, they know what kind of person Amber is. I mean, she's just a despicable human being. So nothing at this point really surprises me about anything that she does. So I was deflated, frustrated. But look, at the end of the day, I'm happy enough that I've got the new channel going and everyone's been pretty supportive of that. So, yeah, I can't complain.
Yeah. So you mentioned that one of the things that you, I guess, is like one of the aspects of this Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, there's the reason why I suspect you find it to be really important is that it is essentially a story we don't hear about, which happens, which is that, that there are in fact cases where men can be victims of domestic violence and that women can be the abusers. And I'm curious because this is a position that we've talked about on this channel, because we talk about men's issues. So we talk about all of the ways that there are all of the ways that women can exploit the system to harm men. It's we're not making a statement about the nature of women, but we're saying the system allows them to do this, and that's a problem. And of course, we talk a lot about our societal biases against men. So if you hear a story, there doesn't really need to be evidence if you hear that, oh, this man abuses women, and everyone just kind of presumes it probably is true, because why would women lie? And so, right. This is one of the things that we focus on. But is there like, why are you interested in that conversation? Like, is there like a personal story? And if if it's too personal, it's okay. We don't have to talk about it. But out of curiosity, or have you seen this happen to other men that you've known? Like, what's the story?
Well, it's a great question, and I guess not to talk too much, but it's been a journey for me. That's how I can describe it. It's been a journey for me. One of, I guess you would say, emotional discovery, to be honest, because I would say about 3 years ago, or just over 3 years ago, I was much like the rest of society. And it sort of, pains me to say that I was naive, and I was really naive to all of these issues, whether that be domestic violence against women or domestic violence against men, especially. And so what happened for me was I originally heard one of the audio recordings between Johnny and Amber. And it was one of the ones where she's admitting to hitting him. She's calling him a baby. She's basically being the abuser. And, at the time, the mainstream media was saying that, of course, Johnny was guilty and all of these things. And then I heard the audio and I went, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right to me. So it just piqued my interest. I wanted to look into it some more. And from there, I started following the UK trial and doing videos on YouTube about, the evidence and what it appeared to be, which was that Johnny was a victim. And what really happened for me from there was, going from that place of naivety, of not even really being aware of or understanding the issues surrounding abuse. All of the comments in my YouTube videos were from victims supporting Johnny, female victims mostly supporting Johnny. But then over time, what progressively happened more and more was that male victims would come forward and say, I'm a victim too. And so I was sort of opened up to this whole world that I knew nothing about and didn't understand. And from there, I thought, well, I'd love to speak to some of these people. So I had some female victims join me on live streams and share their stories with me. And then I had some male victims join me as well. And I suppose, I would say this off the hop, that I support any victim of domestic abuse, male, female. It doesn't, I don't discriminate in that sense. And I think everyone deserves support. The thing that I'm sort of focused on is the disparity in the support for those victims. So there's a lot of support out there for women. And you mentioned, some of the bias there, but there's a lot of support out there for women, which there should be. There absolutely should be. But what I've also found is there's zero support for men. And often men are faced with ridicule and not being believed, told that old saying, man up, just get over it. And so what that really took me down was a path of, well, why aren't we doing anything? What can we do? Why aren't we doing anything? And I suppose the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case really did just highlight that to the rest of the world as well, because it was on such a big stage. And, Johnny's obviously a very popular person. Amber, not so much. And, a lot of people along the way, a lot of people along the way have said, well, are you just a fan of Johnny? Well, I kind of liked his movies before, but I wasn't really what you'd call a quote unquote fan. Yeah. It was more what I was seeing on display in terms of behavior. And so it took me down that path. And, one of the guys I interviewed first, Gary, he was very much going through a situation like Johnny. And that was a couple of years ago, and we're still friends today. We still catch up, and sadly, he's still going through court with his situation. But look, it really inspired me, and I don't know. Look, this sounds dramatic, but I said during the trial, during the US trial in Virginia, that Johnny actually is, in a sense, saving lives, because there was men who reached out to me during the trial as well, who shared their stories for the first time, never told anybody about it, and shared their stories, and they felt comfortable doing so. And the reason I say saving lives, which, as I said, does sound a little dramatic, but there's a reason for that. And that's because some of the men who reached out said that they were actually on the edge of taking their own lives, and they were brought back because, well, somebody actually was listening. Somebody else out there was going through it. They could relate to what Johnny went through. They could relate to all of that stuff, and they could see that there was actually support out there. So it's really important. And I suppose from there, I have just gotten really passionate about it, about what we can actually do to help. So that's, I guess, there's a whole lot of other things around that, but I haven't had a personal experience myself, which I'm very thankful for. But there's so many people out there that I empathize with, and men just don't get the support that they need.
Yeah. I 100% agree with all of that. I don't even really think it's very dramatic. I think that there is, obviously we have a problem with male suicide. It is something that we have talked about. It's obviously not all a product of domestic violence, but there are a number of factors. So a guy could feel that way because he doesn't feel like he's getting any support, because everyone presumes that he can handle it on his own, or he just doesn't have, that network. And I'm really glad that you can talk to those men, because I think that one of the things that men should be looking into, I'll just put it that way, is creating support networks or groups with other men, because we're not going to get it any other way. Obviously these things don't exist for men, like services. I think that there exists one male shelter for male victims of abuse in the United States. There's just one, and there are thousands for women, right? So it's not that I would want to take any of those away from women, obviously, but we should be also considering, that men also need this. So and I guess like the other thing I would add is, or why do you think it is that why do you believe that there just seems to be so much resistance to the notion that Johnny Depp could have been the abuse victim? Like what usually happens, and I'm not just drilling this isn't really about Johnny Depp. I'm just saying this is the primary example, because as you said, high profile case involving very famous people, and that's actually the catalyst for the conversation. But it seems like it's being let's say it's being cast aside in a way by the media and stuff as, they're just both like really abusive messes of human beings, right? And the purpose of that is to basically say, don't look at this too closely, don't overthink this, don't talk about male victims, because they're both probably garbage humans. I mean, that's what they're saying, right? But when you look at the evidence, it's clearly just going in one direction. At least there's nothing to the contrary, and you would think that if there was anything, we would have heard about it, or at least seen some evidence. So why do you think there's so much cover, that's being blown, or smoke that's being blown over the whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, and in particular in defense of Amber Heard, and an attempt to essentially just kind of soil Johnny Depp enough that people won't have sympathy for him?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. I think there's so many different layers and levels to it, but I think ultimately what's happened over time is that the mainstream media have adopted causes like Me Too and Time's Up and those sort of movements, and that's cultivated the attitudes of society. And unfortunately, lots of people out there just look at the media, they look at the headlines, the articles, and they believe what they see in the headlines. And what I think a lot of people out there don't understand as well, that are believing those headlines and articles, is that the people writing them often don't actually understand the facts themselves. Especially, in this case, there's been recently Andrea Burkhardt, who's a lawyer in the US. She had 6,000 pages of unsealed documents released. She obtained those and gave them to all of us. And the media immediately said, oh, all of this is really bad for Johnny Depp. It looks really bad for him. But when you actually read them, there's nothing bad in there about Johnny. It's bad stuff about Amber. So, and negative stuff towards her. So I think really society's attitudes have really degraded men for a long time. And I think Me Too, Time's Up, and all of those things, while they were great causes in their principle and in their original ideology, because of course we want victims to come forward, of course. But what then happened was that they were adopted by media corporations and things like that, and there was a way to make money off them. And so these places, these media outlets, and other people as well, it's become political, and there's been a way to progress political ideology as well as make money off these hashtags and movements. And so what people have done then is put themselves into a very small pigeonhole where they can't now back out of that and say, well, actually, this is what the truth is. We were wrong before, because they've gone down and supported Amber Heard as part of Me Too, Time's Up, and those sorts of things. And they've written what they've written in the past, and now they really just don't want to say what the truth is. When, to be honest, if they did, they would probably be heralded as the most honest media outlet in history, because we all see it. And that's the thing that made the televising of the US trial so important. People say, oh, why did Johnny put Amber through that? Well, it's obvious to me, because if he didn't, then we would have only gotten what the media reported. We wouldn't have got to see it all for ourselves, to see her behavior on the stand, to see him up there telling the truth. And I'm really, just have no faith in the mainstream media at all. These so-called journalists who can't even read a few pages and get the facts right. I think it's just one of those societal issues that's far bigger than what I think most people realize.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as an Australian, what do you think because I don't know like how, what the attitude about this case is there, and also whether, if you're aware, because I'm curious about this, about like, I don't know if there's more advocacy for male victims, if there exists services for male victims, or anything like that. Is that a no? Looks like a no.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So you mentioned the one shelter in the US. There's also just one shelter that caters for men in Australia. So there's one that started, I think, 2 years ago up in Queensland, and that's the only one amongst the thousands that exist for women. And same as you said, I don't want to take away any of those services for women, because I think they have value when women should absolutely be supported. But the other thing that goes along with that is that in the FY22, so 2022 financial budget, the Australian government allocated $1.1 billion to female victims of domestic violence. And I think that's great. That's fantastic. But they allocated exactly $0 to men.
Yeah, of course.
And so to me, that's the biggest issue. It's not that we want to take any resources away from women, but how about giving men some? Giving them some resources to be able to provide those services you talked about for men, because they just don't exist. And, the other thing is, in my country, at least down here in Australia, we have 750,000 plus men report domestic abuse, as in being victims of domestic abuse. That's what's reported. But, reality is most men don't report, because especially a lot of the ones that I've spoken to, they say, I went into a police station. The police laughed at me. I called up the Department of Human Services and told them I was being abused. they told me it was impossible for a man to be abused. And, you know, these guys then, you know, one of them ended up crying in his shower, lying down in the bottom of his shower crying because he didn't know what to do. He had nowhere to go. And, you know, as we talked about earlier, suicide is a big issue. I mean, in Australia, there's, you know, over 8 suicides a day, and 6 of those are men. 75% of all suicides in this country are men. Again, like you said, not all related to domestic violence, absolutely. But, you know, I'd say a fairly big portion of that would be because, you know, men aren't reporting. There's no service to go to. There's no one to talk to about it. There's no place where they can go when they're in that moment of crisis to say, I just need to get away for even 24 hours and try and, you know, get my head straight and figure out what I need to do. So, you know, to me, that disparity is one of the reasons why I really wanted to try and do something tangible to help. And I've started down this path of trying to create a second shelter in this country. So I'm very hopeful we can get there. You know, it may take a little while, but yeah,
we'd have to like consistently make some noise. That's why this Depp-Heard trial is of particular interest to us, because it is, just like I said before, it's high profile. It's making people think about their own internal biases when it comes to domestic abuse and such, and the ways that it feels as though, and this is the thing about the way this case is being covered, it feels as though there is like an establishment push to not allow the acknowledgement of male victims and not allow for the possibility that women can instigate. And I really appreciate that you brought up Me Too and Time's Up, because they I think they are a big part of this. I think that because Amber Heard was after the initial, Me Too things came out, I think Amber Heard shortly after that, brought her allegations forward. And because it was so, again, such a high profile person in Johnny Depp, she became the face of Me Too. And of course, that makes her into a sort of political tool. Now she can be used to raise money. Now she can be used to get millions in grants and donations from various women's groups and billionaires, whatever. And they ran with that, but that means they had to stay on that. So when the trial came around and then all of that started to sort of fall apart, they couldn't just back out of it because they'd already committed. They've committed essentially on the basis of, if a woman says that she's been abused, it must be true, and a man must be the abuser. And I think that's why also, this is a really big deal. And I also think it's the reason why people are as, what I was saying, the people involved in like these hashtags, which are essentially, I think they're basically like astroturfed, things that most people don't really participate in. But they use it to make money. They use it to get more reach. They use it to increase their influence. They use it to change the culture so that we all have the same. It's about carrying forward those biases. So I think that's the reason why they're fighting this narrative so much, and they're trying to cram in their own.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's the narrative has been one that's been carefully crafted, I feel, for a specific goal, which a huge portion of that is money and another portion of that is political. So I think
it's power.
You're absolutely, you're absolutely right. I mean, if people just look objectively at Amber Heard as an individual and Johnny Depp as an individual and how they've lived their lives. And, Johnny will be the first to say that he's not perfect. He's taken drugs. He's done things that he's, not proud of and all of that sort of stuff. But at no point has he ever admitted to abusing anybody. Switch that over to Amber Heard, and she's admitted it on audio recording. She admitted it in court. She's admitted it all over the place. And not only that, she was arrested in 2009 for domestic violence against her ex-partner, Tasha Van Ree. So, and that was a police officer that witnessed that happen. It wasn't just, some random thing and, some random person reporting that. The police woman actually saw it. And so you just can't deny that. Sorry, my camera's turned.
Yeah, I saw that your camera turned off. It's okay. Um, if it has the oh, there you go, there you go.
I'm back.
Okay.
So yeah, so when you put those two side by side as people, it becomes very, very obvious who the abuser is. And I know that a lot of people, particularly in the online space, support Johnny, and that got brought up at the trial as well. Then she tried to say, well, Johnny only won because he's so popular. Well, I don't think that's true. And the other thing with that is Amber Heard never once ever officially reported a complaint against Johnny Depp.
Mm-hmm.
Never. She went for a temporary restraining order,
and she wrote a blog or whatever, but she didn't actually file anything. Yeah.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah, that's very suspicious too. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I brought that up before too. I said, wait, if this all this is true, why is it she wrote an op-ed instead of going to the police? Like
exactly.
So that's really weird. So speaking of which, one of the things that I think is at stake, speaking of narratives, is the narrative of domestic abuse itself. So I've already brought this up a couple times, but most people involved in the domestic abuse services sphere, when you ask them what domestic violence or domestic abuse is, a lot of the time they'll say, well, we have another word for it. It's called wife beating. And it bakes into it a bunch of assumptions, right? So I think this is obviously one of the reasons why there's an overwhelming number of support for women and almost none for men. Have you ever heard of a woman named Erin Pitsey?
I have not.
Okay, so Erin Pitsey is a woman from, she originally in the UK. That's where she was from. And in the 1960s, she wanted to build a women's shelter. And she started the very first women's shelter. So we're like, she's a pioneer, right? And the purpose was, because she was also operating under similar biases, was, women need support. So she started the first women's shelter. And while she was running the shelter, she was also providing, kind of like therapeutic services to the women who went in there. And she would, if they had children, like babies or young children, she would provide services for them. So she was involved in their lives. And she was also performing research on these women. And one of the things that she started to learn was that most of these women who were experiencing violence from their partners are themselves also violent. So like, they so they themselves were also violent and abusive, which statistically that is like usually the case, where you have like two people who don't know how to resolve differences without resorting to violence, and they like start like they get together. But she thought, women can also be violent in the same way. And then she started looking into their histories and then learned that most of these women, like an overwhelming majority, had experienced abuse when they were young. And that is why they carry that forward. So they would be beaten by their mothers or their parents or step parents or whatever. And so she wanted to bring this up with the with like other, I guess, like sort of organizations that were helping her. And so she brought it up to them and said, I'm learning now that women are also abusive, and it's a cycle. Basically what she's saying, it's not just men beating women, it's a generational cycle. And if we can like figure out how to stop it, then you could fix this problem, or at least like make it a lot less of a problem. But the people she was trying to work with, they were so angry with her for even daring to like say this about women, that they chased her out of the country. She had to move to another country, or she couldn't stay where she was. They killed her dog. They threatened her.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, it was terrible. And she's been an advocate for men as victims of abuse and stuff, and for families, children in particular, ever since. And so this reminds me, I'm bringing this up because it sounds like something that's, going on in our conversation about Amber Heard, because it's like there's like a narrative. They want this narrative that women are always the victims. And if you, and this is like going back, she did this in the 1960s or 1970s, and she had to, essentially, she was driven out of the entire industry, and she's been unpersoned. And I believe she is still with us. She's just very old now, but there are parallels, right? It's sort of similar, and that goes back, several decades.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, and that's an interesting story, because especially that it was happening that long ago, but they wanted to push narratives like that, because the thing is as well that and a lot of this has come through the comments of survivors who comment in YouTube videos and things like that, but in discussions too, that Amber Heard has absolutely ruined and set back real victims of domestic violence a long, long way, because it's so obvious that she's lying and she's not telling the truth about anything, that it does the exact opposite of what a domestic violence advocate should be doing. And someone who's talking about domestic violence, it makes people cringe that she has gotten up there as part of those narratives and part of that big push, whether it be political or just be a hashtag. She's got up in front of big crowds and spoken as a victim of domestic violence, when she's not. She's not a victim, at least not at the hands of Johnny. Now, she may have been, like you said, as a child and things like that. And if that's the case, well, that's horrendous. That shouldn't happen to any child. But what she's doing now is she's adopting the stories of other people who are real victims, and that's also a hideous thing to do.
Yeah.
Her assistant Kate James was a victim of abuse and a sexual assault many, many years ago, and confided in Amber about that. Oh, then Amber decided to use that story as her own. And, it's just horrific what she's done, not only for female victims and victims overall, but I'm so shocked. I am so shocked at the level the media will go to just to continue to push this narrative, to say women are always right, women are always telling the truth, men are always the perpetrator, and men always lie. I mean, why isn't this conversation about people? We should be having this conversation about people. There are by and large, majority of people in the world are good people. But there are horrible, horrific people out there. And I say people because that's on both genders. There's male and female. Across the whole entire spectrum, there are people who are bad people.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be talking about it all being men as the perpetrators and all women as the victims. We should be looking at each case individually and say, okay, listen, but verify. So if somebody reports something, and I would say that about men as well, if somebody came to me and said, this is happening and I want to make these accusations, well, of course, listen, but verify what they're saying. We don't have to blindly believe anybody. And I think anytime, particularly with the hashtag believe all women, anytime you put believe or all, in front of a group, so in this case, all women, anytime you put that all blanket over it, you've got real problems, because you're then stuck believing, well, every single woman, every single person, even if they're blatantly lying. So it's really dangerous, I think. And what the other thing is too, just in more of a societal sense, is it creates more separation, where we should be trying to be more, inclusive of people and, fostering positive relationships between just human beings in general. All of this stuff and these narratives create a massive separation, because, then you have things come out like, men going their own way. And you have, a whole bunch of men out there these days going, why would I go anywhere near any female? Because this is where it could end up. And I have the most honorable intentions, but that doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think about this this notion that you brought it up before, and this is something that I've seen. There is this notion that most of the people who support Johnny Depp only support him because they are fans. And this is actually, it's kind of annoying because it's a shockingly common like notion. And I mean, like, for example, there's a YouTuber who makes these animated shorts, and they have this kind of like intentionally grotesque art style. And they were doing the Amber Heard trial, and everyone who sided with Johnny Depp only did so because they like Pirates of the Caribbean or, Captain Jack Sparrow. And that was like the whole joke is he's got so many fans, he can't possibly lose. And I was like, it's a ludicrous thing to even say, but it does seem to be a really common sentiment. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's just an easy out for people who don't want to look at the truth. It's an easy out. It's an easy avenue to go down and say, oh, well, Johnny's so popular, of course he's going to win. Well, I would say to those people as well, if Johnny's so popular, then why did he get kicked off Warner Brothers immediately after the UK trial? Why did Disney drop him from Pirates of the Caribbean immediately after Amber Heard wrote her op-ed? If he's so popular and untouchable, then why did he lose, upwards of $50 million in earnings over a 6-year period? Well, you would say because he's not that impervious and he's not that, superhumanly popular that he can avoid all consequence. And I would also say that it's just ridiculous. I mean, there's so many people out there who are majority silent, silent most of the time. But when they see such an injustice as what happened to Johnny Depp, they speak up. They come out and say, I can't believe what I've just seen. This is absolutely ridiculous. Of course, I support Johnny. And look, the majority of people that I talk to, particularly in the YouTube space, didn't start as fans of Johnny. Like, much like me, just started out saying, well, this doesn't seem right. I need to have a look a little bit more, a little bit deeper here. Yeah. And the more and more you peel back, you go, this is just insane. And so, a lot of us are not fans of Johnny in that sort of sense. I mean, I have a huge respect for the man, especially after finding out all of what I found out, what he went through, and the nice guy that he actually is. Like, he's actually genuinely a really nice guy. I don't think there'd be too many more people that have donated as much to charity as he has, not just in a monetary sense, but also in his time. He one of his favorite things to do is to turn up unannounced at like a children's hospital dressed as Captain Jack and just see the kids smile. So, this is another thing with this whole trial is that, people just dismiss it based on the headlines they hear. People dismiss it saying, oh, it's just because he's so popular and all these people are fans of his and that's why he won the trial. But they forget to even try to find out anything about the guy and what is he actually like, when on Amber Heard's side, looking in a court sense, Amber Heard's side, you've got people who were very close to her assistants, people who knew her, people who were, around her, and they say they're not friends with her anymore. She is a very volatile and disgusting person. And then you've got Johnny Depp's side, where he's got 25-year employees who've worked for him for that entire time, and they just have so much respect for him, they would never leave. And he treats them all so well. And that's male and female employees as well. So you've got his past partners, Vanessa Paradis and Winona Ryder, coming out and saying, I was with Johnny for 14 years and I've never seen him be anything but kind. Amber Heard's own private investigator, Paul Barisi, who she hired to find dirt on Johnny Depp, came back at the end of his investigation and said, all I can say is he's a great guy. I couldn't find anything on him.
Yeah.
So,
that reminds me of another person that's being investigated unfairly, and they haven't found anything on. But I won't go into that road. So, yeah, and you're exactly right. They're trying to use this. I don't know. It's a very lazy counter argument. And you know what? This is like another thing that I think there's an opportunity to bring up here. when we talk about, male victims who are struggling in similar situations, like Johnny Depp essentially happened to have all of the evidence on his side, and he still, I would say, could have easily lost.
Yeah.
Like if the judge had bias, or if Amber Heard was a better actress or whatever, right? Like he could have still
Yeah.
lost. I mean, potentially, because
Yeah.
he was up against a tremendous amount of bias and some precedent, like the not that I think this is fair, but it's invoked a lot, is the whole thing about the Sun, where he lost his
Yes.
case against the Sun, and this is invoked by journalists and commentators and activists and such as the reason why he should not have won in Virginia. And so now change some things around. Imagine that Johnny Depp is not Johnny Depp, and he's just some normal guy who is essentially like is dealing with a similar situation. Like if Depp barely won, which I think at least it's fair to say that he could have lost, and it would have like not surprised people. And of course, all of the work that he lost as a result, like you said, Disney and Warner Brothers both essentially just accepted the narrative as it was, and they fired him. They didn't even investigate at all, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he lost work, and then imagine it's just a regular man who's essentially in the same situation. He has no chance, right?
No
Yeah.
chance at all. No chance at all. And look, it's been great to have Johnny Depp come forward, and I think his time on the stand was really powerful. Talking about his experience as a childhood, which was pretty horrific, talking about his experiences with Amber, which were definitely horrific. And I think that's been really, really fantastic. But you're so right. There's so many men out there, and look, in a sense, Johnny was, I guess, blessed, and he would say this as well, that he had the resources to be able to fight this with such great attorneys.
That's right.
And he did have the evidence there. And he also just generally had the truth on his side. So he was able to do that. But most men, regular men, like you said, would have absolutely no chance. And most that I, have spoken to tell that story. I there's nothing I could do. And I mean, I'll bring this up now because you mentioned regular men. And this is one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about this, because I had a guy reach out to me from the UK named Jay. This was during the Johnny Depp trial in the US. And he said to me, basically, thank you for covering this. Thank you for talking about it. He said, I've never shared this with anybody. But what happened to him was his partner, his wife at the time, was really abusive towards him. And I mean, like physically abusive. So as an example, he told me he went out one night, drinks with friends, something like that, came home too late. And so she broke his leg with a hockey stick because he came home too late.
Wow.
And then, and there was many more incidents like that. So what he did was he started drinking to try and drown out that pain, drown out that, that emotional pain and everything. And so his wife then accused him of domestic violence. And because he had been drinking and everybody knew he'd been drinking, the judge, the jury at the time, they convicted him. And so he got sentenced to 8 years in prison. And while he was in prison, other prisoners found out that he'd been accused of sexual assault, and they didn't like that. So what they did was they created a homemade napalm, and they poured it all over his body and gave him third-degree burns all over his body. And he went through other years of torture in prison because of this. And so he spent six years in prison going through this. And after 6 years, his ex-wife came forward and said, you know what? I lied about it all. It wasn't true. So he was exonerated. He was released from prison. But at that point, he had no home. He had no friends, no job, absolutely nothing. He was horrifically tortured. He was mentally scarred. And, he attempted to take his own life. And he didn't succeed, which I say is a good thing now, because he's been able to since move on with a new family and find somebody else, and he's doing okay in general. But he said to me every day, every single day, I battle with what I went through and the mental scarring that happened there. And so, when he shared that story with me, I mean, first of all, it brought me to tears, to be honest, because it's just so horrific. And he, he was able to get through all of that. And the thing that happened to his ex-wife when she came forward and admitted she lied, nothing, no consequence whatsoever. So he's had to go through all of the abuse with her, all of the, torture in prison and the mental anguish of being falsely accused as well, then released, and he's got nothing, and there's no penalty for her.
Yeah.
So and to me, I just go, well, if he's one person, one man who has come forward now but never shared this before, how many more men have the same story out there? How many more men share that same experience and can't tell anybody about it?
Yeah. Yeah, especially the bit where he goes to prison and the prison inmates attack him, because this is something that we have also talked about on our show. Like, a false allegation that sends a man to jail actually has more danger attached to it, because the average man, even a criminal man, doesn't like want to harm women. Like, they're usually they're either just violent people in general, and they'll basically harm anyone, they don't care, or they're in there for some other reason, like they stole or something like that. But men will still essentially be violent towards other men that they think are being violent towards women, and it doesn't matter if they're criminals, because criminals hate rapists, for example, the average one,
right,
as an example. So if you accuse a guy of rape and send him to jail, then he's probably going to get killed in prison. So by the other men. And of course, being murdered in prison should not be part of the sentence you get, because if you get exonerated later, it might not matter because you're gone. So that story is horrendous, but I'm sure that it's not that uncommon. And I was gonna ask you, are you outside of the YouTube channel and all that, which I think is great? I think that we need more people that are trying to put the truth out there, because again, we are dealing with a lot of narratives, especially coming from our media, and it doesn't matter what country you guys have problems with your media, we have problems with ours. But what I'm wondering is that, like, are there other things, like other projects that you're advocating for, or maybe something that you're looking into, like perhaps a men's shelter, for example? Have you considered anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually within the next, I'd say about 4 to 5 weeks, I will have an officially established non-profit, so charity organization, registered with the Australian Charities Commission, which will be, it's actually going to be called, it was going to be called Sparrow's Nest. It's going to be called Sparrow's Dawn now, because the name was already taken. But so yes, that is my big project at the moment. So I've was able to raise money through the very gracious people on YouTube who helped me raise enough money to engage legal services to create and develop the framework for an established registered charity. So that will be done in the next 4 weeks or so, which is very exciting. And then the end goal of that is to raise enough money and approach government, approach other organizations to raise money to develop the second domestic violence shelter for men in Australia. So that is the goal. That's what I'm working towards. And, I've reached out to government officials, to politicians and things like that, to see if we can get some assistance for men financially. But I've had one reply. One of the federal members of parliament replied and said that if they get elected, they will, look at allocating some funds. So, I'll take that with a grain of salt at this point, because politicians, much like the media, I don't trust them all that much. But we will see. We will see. So yeah, that's the project I'm working on at the moment, and I'm very, very passionate about creating a place. Initially, it will be, it'll be an online space while the funds are being raised and generated. But my end goal is really to have a physical place where men can go to get, even if it's, like I said, just some of that 24-hour respite or short-term respite, to be able to think clearly, get some advice, some objective advice, and be able to move on into a safer place and, into a more healthy situation for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully working with people who actually care about their well-being, and that's their primary focus. So, are you looking at any other high-profile cases, like other than, because the Depp-Heard thing appears to be, it's kind of like on the way out. I mean, there are still, narratives popping up here and there, but for most people, we're all happy with the outcome. And so,
Right.
are you looking at any other cases, like, for example, Marilyn Manson? Because I noticed
Yes.
that as soon as like the Johnny Depp case started to like come to its conclusion, then like these new allegations come out, and they're pointing fingers at Marilyn Manson. So yeah, what have you? What do you have any thoughts on that right away? I know we don't know anything yet and all that, but
Well, I mean, I do. So I've dipped my toe into the Marilyn Manson case, and Andrea Burkhart, I mentioned her before. She's a lawyer, and she's been covering Marilyn Manson, that case. Colonel Kurtz on YouTube as well has been doing a great job for like about the last year covering the Marilyn Manson stuff. But yes, I am going to jump into that because there's some very similar things that you see in that case and the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case.
That's
and
what
there's
I was
also
thinking.
and there's also some connections too, because Marilyn Manson and Johnny Depp are really good friends. And Evan Rachel Wood and Amber Heard were also friends at some point.
Whoa,
So
that's weird. I didn't know about that. Evan Rachel Wood and Amber Heard being friends. That's weird. Okay.
yes, and there's also a connection between them because Amber's Time's Up lawyer in the beginning, and Amber's changed lawyers so many times now. It's like a revolving door. But Roberta Kaplan was a big advocate for the hashtags as well. And she also has a connection to Evan Rachel Wood. So it's there's some really interesting connections there. But I think one of the biggest things for me in the Marilyn Manson case is that, again, Evan Rachel Wood herself has not filed any official complaint against Marilyn Manson. Other women have at her behest, but she hasn't herself. And Marilyn Manson has filed an official complaint against her and her offsider and girlfriend, Ilma Gore, because they, and one of the things that came out, which I found really interesting, you don't often see this in court documents, especially initial complaints. There was evidence that Marilyn Manson attached to that complaint showing that Evan Rachel Wood and Ilma Gore impersonated an FBI agent. They actually wrote a letter as if they were FBI agents and sent it out to people impersonating the FBI. And that was proven because when the FBI was called about this, they said, we don't know anything about this letter. We don't know anything about, and the crimes unit that they've quoted as the, where they were from doesn't exist. So, that's just one thing, but there's so much with the Marilyn Manson case. And there's so many people involved that, I do need to dive into it a little bit more to get my head around it. And I will say at this point, it's I'll always keep an open mind. If something comes out that's damning against Marilyn Manson, well, we've got to be objective and say, if there's objective evidence that says, yes, he's guilty of something, well, we have to look at that. But at this point, it very much looks similar to Johnny and Amber. And the thing for Marilyn Manson is that he's got much more of an uphill battle, I feel, in the public sense and in the societal sense, because his persona that he has with his music and his videos and just his public persona is much more of a negative one in general than what Johnny Depp has had. Johnny Depp has always been really just a great guy, but Marilyn Manson's perceived, because of his public persona, to be a bad person and be who he pretends to be on stage or pretends to be in his music videos. So much more of an uphill battle there, I think.
Definitely in the PR sense, because that's what my initial thoughts were when I heard the allegations. I said, oh, so we're going to like point at the shock rocker guy with the crazy makeup and the black lipstick and everything. And we're going to say, this guy is abusive, and everyone's going to just look at his face and his, the costumes, and they're going to be like, well, yeah, obviously, even though again, it's funny because that's never been true of musicians. Like nobody thinks like Alice Cooper is nothing like what people think of when they look at him.
Right. Absolutely.
Know? so
And I'm glad you mentioned him, another friend of Johnny Depp, another long-term friend of
yeah,
Johnny
that's
Depp.
right. Yeah, Alice Cooper is a friend of John. Alice Cooper's probably one of the coolest dudes ever in entertainment.
Yeah.
But another thing about the Marilyn Manson thing that I thought was really interesting was when this, I think, broke, so it was kind of early on when the allegations first came out. Rose McGowan was approached, and Rose McGowan used to date Marilyn Manson.
Yeah.
And she was approached and asked about her experience with him. And and the reason why I think this is interesting is that Rose McGowan was always like the really hardcore Me Too person. Like she just wanted women to be believed no matter what, right? And I mean, she even got into infighting with other people, like Alyssa Milano, for example, who was like behind the Time's Up thing. So when asked, she said, because she dated Marilyn Manson for a while, she said that he never laid a finger on her. He was always respectful, right? And that she has nothing but love and admiration for him. But that the women, the woman making the allegation should be listened to. That second part, I think, is just PR stuff. But the first part is what interests me, because it does kind of ring similar to Kate Moss and Winona Ryder and these like exes of Johnny Depp that were like, well, he never laid a finger on me. And so Rose McGowan admits that she never had a bad experience with him. And but because she is part of Me Too, she had to make a statement. So it's just really interesting.
And you're right. And that's a great example of what I was talking about before about the pigeonholing themselves, So Rose McGowan obviously said, yeah, we've got to believe all women, right? So she actually doesn't believe Evan Rachel Wood, because she says, well, Marilyn Manson never did anything to me. But now, because she's propagated and, had that same narrative she's pushed for so long, she can't say anything else but, well, yeah, we have to believe her because you have to believe every woman. So, it's just silly. Why not just say, we'll believe all evidence? That'd be great. Like, believe
That'd
evidence.
be great.
Yeah.
That'd be a nice place to start. Yeah. Let's do that. All right. So congratulations on the project. I want to learn more. Maybe when it gets to a point, maybe you might need funding or you're going to start some kind of Kickstarter thing. You can let us know, and then we'll share it out on our channel, and that way maybe some people will come and help out, because our audience really cares about men's issues. Domestic violence is just one piece of the pie, but it is a big one, especially our perception of it, like the popularly held perceptions, and we got to shake that out, because we have to acknowledge that men can be victims too, and that they will also need help. So keep us in the loop on that, and I guess before we go, because we're getting to the end here, and I have some super chats as well. Is there what are some places that people should go to see what you're up to, like what your social media and such?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on Twitter, you can find me at the handle Stevie J Raw on Twitter, which will come up with Vault of Truth. Same on Instagram. And I'm also over on Rockfin now, which is like a YouTube-esque platform, but without the ads and without the censorship. So if people want to head over there, you can find me on YouTube at Vault of Truth, and the links are all in the descriptions there of those videos. But, I also wanted to say thanks very much for, giving me the opportunity to come on and share my thoughts on some of these issues, which, I'm passionate about. Clearly, you are as well. And I think it's really important that we keep sharing this out and, get the word out there to people in general, but, obviously men as well, that there are people listening, there are people who support them. So.
Yes, absolutely. Well said. I agree 100%. And the more people from more different places that are talking about this, the better too. That's why I thought, because we've been to Australia. We went to a men's conference. I want to say it was in 2017, and we were in, was it Queensland? I don't know.
Queensland, yeah. Well, that's a nice place to be. So
yeah, I think so. It was nice. So and I want to go back. But I only went the one time. So
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So let me read some super chats that I got here, and then we will wrap it up. So Zeranx gives us 2 super chats, one for $5 and one for $10, and he's giving us like a 2-part comment. He says Amber Heard displayed characteristics ascribed to women rarely observed by most people. Men have said women store our low points to use against us. Heard used a confidant's story to use in her best interest opportunistically. Surprised that it hurts said confidant. So I guess you're talking about like a story of another woman that she knows that, There are so many stereotypes Heard exhibited that many/some think that essentially that they're fictional.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And thank you for that, Zeranx. Do you have any thoughts on what he said?
Well, I mean, I agree. And I think he's referring to Kate James there, her personal assistant, who shared her story in confidence with Amber. And then she went on to adopt and use that story as her own. And yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. You know, it's what we saw. And this is the thing, you know, Amber's one of those people who wanted to tell people during the trial, not only the jury and the courtroom, but the world, because the world was watching. She wanted to say, you know, if they played an audio recording or they called her out on a lie, she wanted to literally sit there and say, everybody watching this, you didn't see or hear what you just heard. And I think, you know, that's part of what he's saying there. Like, her behavior was like all of these characteristics that people just assume never exist, and especially don't exist in women, for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right. And now I got some super chows as well. Tip for HBR News number 369 gives us $5 and just says nice. Thank you. Maintaining Frame number 30 commentator gives us $5. This is from another show we did. And they say, actually, if 62% of dating app users are men, then the remainder are 30% women, not 48. Well, if you're going to like apply the binary to everybody, which I don't know that you have the right to do. You don't know how they identify. But yeah, I guess that was just a miscalculation. And thanks for the show gives us $5 and says, here's a thank you tip for HBR Talk, number 226. Thank you. And Amasang gives us $5 and says, badgers for the honey. All right. So that is all of the super chats. Yeah, we cover a wide breadth of topics. We talk about dating. We talk about divorce. We talk about child custody. We talk about the consequences of fatherless homes, and so much more. So everybody, and our audience is probably the most opinionated on the internet. So, all right. So with that said, we are now going to go into the patron only show. If you guys want to join us on the patron only show, you have to become a badger yourself. So $5 a month. It's only $5 a month. We'll get you into the Discord group where you'll be able to watch all of the additional content, including, you know, drafts of videos that Allison is putting out. And if you give it higher levels, then you can even join the conversations and, you know, be a part of them. So if you have, you know, thoughts on a story that we covered or a guest and you want to ask them a question, please consider giving at higher levels. So, all right, with all that said, if you guys like this video, please smash the like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications so you know when our streams go live. Leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. I look forward to seeing your commentary, and most importantly, please share this video because sharing is caring. All of the info to follow Steve is in the description. Right? It's Stevie, right? Stevie or Steve? Does it matter?
Stevie's good. Yeah.
Okay, Stevie. Yeah, all of his links are in the description. So, you know, check him out, follow him on Twitter, go to his YouTube channel. And yeah, that is it. That is it from me. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of the Fireside Chat, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.